Hello and welcome back. Today we're reacting to another Kurzgesagt video. Genetic engineering will change everything forever. CRISPR. Now I've heard about CRISPR before. I know that it's a way to kind of target and overwrite certain things in DNA. That's about all I know. Let's learn some more.
Imagine you were alive back in the 1980s and were told that computers would soon take over everything from shopping to dating and the stock market.
Just kidding, I was born.
That billions of people would be connected via a kind of web. That
Did that say hot nerds near you?
That billions of people
Sign me up.
would be connected via a kind of web. That you would own a handheld device orders of magnitude more powerful than supercomputers.
I remember the Game Boy.
It would seem
Good
absurd,
days.
but then all of it happened. Science fiction became our reality, and we don't even...
I like the Adventure Time reference in the background. I've never watched that show, but I've seen enough of it in advertising and in clips and stuff that I recognize the reference.
think about it. We're at a similar point today with genetic engineering. So let's talk about it. Where it came from, what we're doing right now, and about a recent breakthrough that will change how we live and what we perceive as normal forever.
Genetic engineering actually scares the crap out of me because we're going to get to the point, and I have a feeling based on the thumbnail, they're going to talk about this, but we're going to get to the point where it's basically build a baby. when you have children, you can pick their eye color, their hair color, their skin complexion, certain other features. At what point is it okay? At what point is it too far? You know? And I don't know. Because some would argue that that's playing God, and that's not okay. Others would argue that we're just working with the tools that God gave us, if there's a God. And if there's not a God, then who cares? We're just doing what we can. I kind of fall in between the two arguments, I feel, because I feel that, yes, we're working with what's available to us, and we're doing what we can do with what's available to us. That's all we can ever do. But I also feel like just because we can do it doesn't mean that we should. Now, there's a fine line between making a genetic change to a baby to eliminate a disease or an illness or some sort of disability that child would have been born with otherwise, and giving them a more normal life, or potentially saving their life. I'm all for that. Let's do that. Let's better mankind. But something as trivial as eye color, or hair color, or anything like that, I mean, come on. That's taking it a little too far, in my opinion. Dun dun dun. Kurzgesagt. I have fun with that. I don't know. Genetic modification.
Humans have been engineering life for thousands of years. Through selective breeding, we strengthened useful traits in plants and animals.
And also, I'm really glad they started here, because that's a very good point. When it comes to genetically modifying food, I'm all for that too. If we can make it easier for us to produce and maintain our food supply, yes, let's do it. Let's 100% do it. There's no reason not to.
We became very good at this, but never truly understood how it works until we discovered the code of life, deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. A complex molecule that guides the growth, development, function, and reproduction of everything alive. Information is encoded in the structure of the molecule. 4 nucleotides are paired and make up a code that carries instructions.
If you think about it, DNA is ridiculous in how simple and yet how complex it is. How can something so simple be so complex? And how can something as simple as it is... Now, there's an argument that it's not simple because of the systems that are involved in it. But I'm talking DNA itself. It's 4 letters over and over and over and over again. And really, it's only 2 combinations because... Well, it's 4 combinations, but... How? It's... I don't even know how else to articulate that other than just being exasperated and yelling "how" at the monitor. It's crazy.
Change the instructions and you change the being carrying it. As soon as DNA was discovered, the instructions and you change the
That one almost got by me. I almost didn't catch that somehow.
being carrying it. As soon as DNA was discovered, people tried to tinker with it. In the 1960s, scientists bombarded plants with radiation to cause random mutations in the genetic code. The idea was to get a useful plant variation by pure chance. Sometimes it actually worked too.
Huh.
In the 70s, scientists inserted DNA snippets into bacteria, plants, and animals to study and modify them for research, medicine, agriculture, and for fun.
Just stick a needle in it.
The genetically modified animal was born in 1974, making mice a standard tool for research, saving millions of lives. In the 80s, we got commercial. The first patent was given for a microbe engineered to absorb oil.
Now, I know this isn't the topic of the video, but speaking of genetic engineering in laboratory mice, what's your stance on testing with mice? That's pretty much the standard. We have laboratory mice, we have laboratory rats. All over the world, we're testing on them. We're testing perfume, we're testing shampoo, we're testing medicine, we're testing social structure and reaction, we're testing memory. Everything you can think of is being tested on mice or rats somewhere. My personal thought on it, and I look forward to any discussion, but my personal thought on it is it's okay as long as we aren't causing unnecessary harm. Now, that being said, I'm okay with hurting them if it's for the benefit of humanity. If we're benefiting in some way and we have to test something and it's going to cause them pain, keep it to as minimal as possible. Don't have any unnecessary pain in there, and then it's okay with me. Because sometimes you have to take little hits for the greater good. And unfortunately for the mice and the rats, that's just the case in this scenario, that they happen to be the lab rat, so to say.
Today, we produce many chemicals by means of engineered life, like life-saving clotting factors, growth hormones, and insulin, all things we had to harvest from the organs of animals before that. The first food modified in the lab went on sale in 1994, the Flavor Saver tomato.
Only in 1994? Why did I think that it was older than that? I thought we had genetically modified foods back in the 80s for some reason. Wow. I knew it was a tomato, though. I did know it was a tomato.
A tomato given a much longer shelf life via an extra gene that suppressed the buildup of a rotting enzyme.
Yeah.
But GM food and the controversy surrounding them deserve a video of their own.
I wonder if they have a video on that. We'll have to check that out if they do. But absolutely, something like that to me is a no-brainer. If you can make it last longer on the shelf, if you can make it easier to harvest, if you can just generally improve it in some way, go ahead. We already have a huge problem in this world with food waste. If we can reduce that, yeah.
In the 1990s, there was also a brief foray into human engineering. To treat maternal infertility, babies were made that carried genetic information from 3 humans, making them the first humans ever to have 3 genetic parents. Today, there are super-muscled pigs, fast-growing salmon, featherless chickens, and see-through frogs. On the fun side, we made things glow in the dark. Fluorescent zebrafish are available for as little as $10.
Can we make me glow in the dark? That would be so cool. Well, that's the thing about genetic engineering. You know, selling the zebrafish for only $10 that glow in the dark. Once you do it a handful of times, if it's something that you can make breedable, it's so easy to replicate. Especially with something that has as low of a gestation and reproductive rate, or as low of a gestation and high of a reproductive rate as a zebrafish. You only need to make one good batch of them or a couple good batches of them, and then you breed them, and you can get a huge supply really fast, a replenishable supply. Especially if that gene that causes the glowing, in this instance, is a dominant gene, and you can breed them with normal fish. And then you have a high probability of getting the glow-in-the-dark one. Genetics is crazy, man.
All of this is already very impressive, but until recently, gene editing was extremely expensive, complicated, and took a long time to do. This has now changed with a revolutionary new technology now entering the stage: CRISPR.
Clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. What does palindromic mean? I don't know. I'm assuming they're going to tell us. But so before we move on, because I have a feeling they're not going to cover this, but one fear of mine that actually legitimately concerns me is how we have cataloged a lot of things, the genomes for them, including the bubonic plague, COVID, tons and tons of different horrible viruses that you could go online right now with a quick Google search and you can find the genome for these viruses. Today, right now, you can't do anything with that information unless you have a huge, sophisticated, multi-million-dollar lab. 100 years in the future, you might be able to manufacture these things at home. Or it might be a lot more easy to do it than it is today. And that's something that we're not thinking about. That's called an information hazard. It's something that can cause harm just by knowing that information. And it's not a problem right now, but down the road, that could be a horrible, horrible thing. Think of something like the bubonic plague in the wrong hands. Someone being able to manufacture that. Think of the terrorist or other extremist groups and what they can do with those types of things. It's scary, and anyone can go online and just download the full genome. I think we need to address that. I think that this is another scenario where legislation and rules might be a really good thing.
Overnight, the costs of engineering have shrunk by 99%. Instead of a year, it takes a few weeks to conduct experiments, and basically everybody with a lab can do it. It's hard to get across how big a technical revolution CRISPR is. It literally has the potential to change humanity forever. Why did this sudden revolution happen, and how does it work?
Future scientist TM. The oldest war on Earth.
Bacteria and viruses have been fighting since the dawn of life. So-called bacteriophages or phages hunt bacteria. In the ocean, phages kill 40% of them every single day.
We watched a video on that.
Phages do this by inserting their own genetic code into the bacteria and taking them over to use them as factories.
Those things are crazy.
The bacteria try to resist, but fail most of the time because their protection tools are too weak. But sometimes bacteria survive an attack. Only if they do so can they activate their most effective antivirus system. They save a part of the virus DNA in their own genetic code in a DNA archive called CRISPR. Here, it's stored safely until it's needed. When the virus attacks again, the bacterium quickly makes an RNA copy from the DNA archive and arms a secret weapon, a protein called Cas9.
We learned about this.
The protein now scans the bacterium's insides for signs of the virus invader by comparing every bit of DNA it finds to the sample from the archive.
So the CRISPR part is basically the photocopier that takes that DNA segment and then makes an RNA copy from it. Is that kind of what's happening here?
When it finds a 100% perfect match, it's activated and cuts out the virus DNA, making it useless, protecting the bacterium against the attack. What's special is that Cas9 is very precise, almost like a DNA surgeon. The revolution began when scientists figured out that the CRISPR system is programmable. You can just give it a copy of DNA you want to modify and put the system into a living cell. If the old techniques of genetic manipulation were like a map, CRISPR is like a GPS system. Aside from being precise, cheap, and easy, CRISPR offers the ability to edit live cells, to switch genes on and off, and target and study particular DNA sequences.
If you can do this on live cells, would it be hypothetically possible to, say, modify the gene for your eye color, hypothetically, and say, I have blue eyes, but I want brown eyes, and inject this into a living person, a full-grown, mature adult, and change their eye color. I'm guessing that might be too big of a take on for the CRISPR, right? That might be too much on its shoulders. But with a very small or very early development baby, a fetus, you could almost certainly do something like that, right?
It also works for every type of cell, microorganisms, plants, animals, or humans.
Wow.
But despite the revolution CRISPR is for science, it's still just a first-generation tool. More precise tools are already being created and used as we speak.
How do you get more precise than that? The end of disease.
In 2015, scientists used CRISPR to cut the HIV virus out of living cells from patients in the lab, proving that it was possible.
Wait, what?
Only about a year later, they carried out a larger-scale project with rats that had the HIV virus in basically all of their body cells. By simply injecting CRISPR into the rats' tails, they were able to remove more than 50% of the virus from cells all over the body. In a few decades, a CRISPR therapy might cure HIV.
Whoa. That's crazy. So things that are potentially incurable today could maybe become curable via this method in the future. And even if they're not fully curable, that was one injection, right? They said one injection, 48%. What if you got multiple injections? You know, what if there was a treatment plan? Is there any downside to getting treated this way? Does it take a tax on your body? Does it wear you out? Is there any risk associated with it?
And other retroviruses, viruses that hide inside human DNA like herpes, could be eradicated this way.
Huh.
CRISPR could also defeat one of our worst enemies, cancer. Cancer occurs when cells refuse to die and keep multiplying while concealing themselves from the immune system.
So is the thought there that you would actually take like a biopsy or whatnot and get the cancerous cells from the individual? Because cancer by its very nature can be very pseudo-random and unpredictable. So you'd have to do an individualized treatment, but once you were able to identify the part that's causing the cancerous cell to go nuts and multiply, you could create a targeted CRISPR treatment in order to cut out that part and inject it into infected sites. Wow. Dude, how... I'm sorry, I'm just getting my mind blowing over here. Technology is insane. We're insane.
CRISPR gives us the means to edit your immune cells and make them better cancer hunters.
Oh.
Getting rid of...
So it's a more indirect route than I was thinking. But is there a reason why we don't do that? Because the whole point of cancer cells is that their DNA has been messed up, right? Causing them to reproduce wildly. Isn't that true? I think that's true.
Cancer might eventually mean getting just a couple of injections of a few thousand of your own cells that have been engineered in the lab to heal you for good.
Huh.
The first clinical trial for a CRISPR cancer treatment on human patients was approved in early 2016 in the US.
How did it go?
Not even a month later, Chinese scientists announced that they would treat lung cancer patients with immune cells modified with CRISPR in August 2016.
How'd it go?
Things are picking up pace quickly. And then there are genetic diseases.
How'd it go? You
There
gotta
are
tell us.
thousands of them, and they range from mildly annoying to deadly or entail decades of suffering. With a powerful tool like CRISPR, we may be able to end this. Over 3,000 genetic diseases are caused by a single incorrect letter in your DNA.
Wow.
We are already building a modified version of Cas9 that is made to change just a single letter, fixing the disease in the cell. In a decade or two, we could possibly cure thousands of diseases forever.
Wow.
But all of these medical applications have one thing in common.
Just one cell? Or just one letter in the DNA strand? I don't remember how long a DNA strand is in terms of letters, but I do remember that it's absolutely mind-blowingly big. And you're telling me that just a single error in the right spot can cause some of these crazy diseases? The human body is nothing if not amazing.
They are limited to the individual and die with them, except if you use them on reproductive cells or very early embryos. But CRISPR can and probably will be used for much more: the creation of modified humans, designer babies, and will mean gradual but irreversible changes to the human gene pool.
And that's where I draw the line personally. I don't think that we should be modifying based on aesthetics or cosmetics. I don't think that's the case. We should not, especially when the child in question in the womb has no consent on this. Leave it to nature. If it's something that will better the life of the child, go for it. If it's something that's a parental preference on how you want your child to appear, yeah, let's not do that. I don't think that should be allowed.
The means to edit the genome of a human embryo already exist, though the technology is still in its early stages. But it has already been attempted twice. In 2015 and 2016, Chinese scientists experimented with human embryos and were partially successful on their second attempt. They showed the enormous challenges we still face in gene editing embryos, but also that scientists are working on solving them. This is like the computer in the 70s. There will be better computers.
Why did they fail?
Regardless of your personal take on genetic engineering, it will affect you. Modified humans could alter the genome of our entire species because their engineered traits will be passed on to their children and could spread over generations, slowly modifying the whole gene pool of humanity.
Yeah, exactly.
It will start slowly. The first designer babies will not be overly designed. It's most likely that they will be created to eliminate a deadly genetic disease running in a family.
And that's okay with me.
As the technology progresses and gets more refined, more and more people may argue that not using genetic modification is unethical.
Oh, it 100% is unethical. If we have a tried and true way, which I get that we're not to the tried and true part yet, but if we do one day, and you have the ability to eliminate suffering in an innocent unborn child, if you have that opportunity, it's completely unethical not to take it. 100%. There's no doubt in my mind.
Because it condemns children to preventable suffering and death and denies them the cure. But as soon as the first engineered kid is born, a door is opened that can't be closed anymore. Early on, vanity traits will mostly be left alone. But as genetic modification becomes more accepted and our knowledge of our genetic code enhances, the temptation will grow. If you make your offspring immune to Alzheimer, why not also give them an enhanced metabolism? Why not throw in perfect eyesight? How about height or muscular structure? Full hair? How about giving your child the gift of extraordinary intelligence? Huge changes are made as a result of the personal decisions of millions of individuals that accumulate.
Goku! Yes, Dragon Ball Z reference. I love the references. But no, I mean, so when we talk about that list, I'm okay with most of that. I'm okay with enhanced metabolisms. I'm okay with perfect eyesight. These are all quality of life improvements. I'm fine with that. Height, on the other hand, in my opinion, that's completely cosmetic. 100%. Hair color, eye color, those things are 100% cosmetic. I don't think that should be trifled with. But the other things, perfect eyesight, stuff like that, if it improves the quality of health or reduces suffering, 100% I am for it. I actually think that we should get to a point where once the technology is there and exists and is tried and true and we trust it, 100%, it should be mandatory. You shouldn't be able to choose to have a child without the life-saving, quality-enhancing changes. That's what I think. Maybe it's an unpopular opinion, and we're not there yet, to be clear. But 100 years down the road, or whatever it is when this technology is perfected, I think it should be mandatory. We have an ethical responsibility if we have the opportunity to improve the quality of life of our children We should take it.
This is a slippery slope. Modified humans could become the new standard. But as engineering becomes more normal and our knowledge improves, we could solve the single biggest mortality risk factor, aging. 2/3 of the 150,000 people who die today will die of age-related causes. Currently, we think aging is caused by the accumulation of damage to our cells, like DNA breaks and the systems responsible for fixing those wearing off over time.
Now, I've heard mixed opinions on this. I've heard of the telomere issue, how they wear down. That's one issue. But there's also several other issues, right? So I think that it's very important that we don't oversimplify what aging is and what causes it. There's likely a number of factors that contribute to it. So to pick one of them and focus on it and say, this is the cause, I don't think that's responsible. But that being said, if we can address any one of those particular causes, that's great work. And I know that there's the lab, Harvard, has been doing some work on that, and they've actually successfully rolled back aging in mice. So that's very impressive. I'm sure that there's a video on that somewhere for us to watch. But honestly, I think that could potentially be the largest breakthrough in our generation, is the work that they're doing down in Harvard. I can't remember the name of it. Of course I can't remember. But that's insane. I also think that this, and I've been saying this a lot lately, which maybe paints the wrong picture, but I also think that when it comes to anti-aging or reversing aging and extending a human life significantly, I think it's very, very important that we get ahead of the ball as that technology becomes more and more feasible down the road. Maybe we will never achieve it, but I think we do have the potential to achieve biological immortality. I really do. And I think it's imperative that we get ahead of the ball on legislating that. There has to be some form of rules if biological immortality is feasible. There has to be. We cannot, as a species, just pick everyone and say, hey, you're all immortal now. Yes, you can die in a car crash and some other freak accident, but you'll never die of old age. Our population will. So there needs to be rules there. And what those rules are, I don't necessarily know. We could sit and talk about it for sure, but that's not the point of this video. But we have to have rules and regulations controlling and governing that, so that way that doesn't spin out of control, because that's going to be a hard problem to fix once we're already knee deep in it. But it's going to be really easy if we actually get ahead of it for once. Ever.
But there are also genes that directly affect aging. A combination of genetic engineering and other therapy could stop or slow down aging, maybe even reverse it. We know from nature that there are animals immune to aging. Maybe we could even borrow a few genes for ourselves.
That'd be cool.
Some scientists even think biological aging could be something that eventually just stops being a thing. We would still die at some point, but instead of doing so in hospitals at age 90, we might be able to spend a few thousand years with our loved ones.
I would 100% sign up for biological immortality. 100%. There's no doubt in my mind. Some of us, I know it's not for everyone. Some of us would argue that it's unnatural. It goes against their religion. Whatever other arguments there are out there, they would get bored. I wouldn't get bored. Living is my favorite thing to do, actually. I would sign up for it in a heartbeat.
Research into this is in its infancy. And many scientists are rightly skeptical about the end of aging. The challenges are enormous, and maybe it is unachievable.
Maybe it is.
But it is conceivable that people alive today might be the first to profit from effective anti-aging therapy.
The research that they did with the Harvard lab, I really wish I could remember the name now, but Harvard has done research on this recently. Well, I mean, they've been doing it for quite some time, but they've recently published a study where they've made a bit of a breakthrough here. And they're actually able to adjust age. So they can accelerate aging and they can roll it back. And they've actually successfully rolled back aging in old mice. And the old mice, one of the things that's really important here is not only did it physically roll back aging, so it increased the metabolism, the gray hair started actually disappearing, which is weird, because the hair started growing back in with color, but it, increased muscle mass. But the most important part was it also increased brain functionality. So not only did the hardware get rolled back, so to say, but the software that controls everything did too. And that's very important. But the other key piece is the mice still remembered tricks that they were taught in their infancy. So they were trained on pressing a button to do this, do that, blah, blah, blah. They were still able to recall these things. So they at least kept their cognizant abilities too, which the potential here is huge. Now, they haven't tested this on humans as far as I'm aware, but they've tested it on human cell cultures and have experienced positive results. So I think that out of anything I've ever heard of being worked on right now that's ever showed any promise that's currently happening, this research that's being done at Harvard on this topic, this is the big one. If this actually comes to fruition and they're able to actually successfully test it in humans, which, we're probably about a decade or so out before they're able to put it inside a human. But there's a lot of rules on that. This is the thing to watch. This is what could be what defines our generation.
All we might need is for someone to convince a smart billionaire to make it their next problem to solve.
Mm-hmm.
On a bigger scale, we certainly could solve many problems by having a modified population. Engineered humans might be better equipped to cope with high-energy food, eliminating many diseases of civilization like obesity.
Yeah.
In possession of a modified immune system, with a library of potential threats, we might become immune to most diseases that haunt us today. Even further into the future, we could engineer humans to be equipped for extended space travel and to cope with different conditions on other planets.
That's a very, very good point, actually, is when it comes to exploring our galaxy, we have a lot of limitations because humans are just simply not made for this type of thing, for space travel. One of the videos we did recently from the SciShow actually was talking about how a lot of astronauts end up having vision problems after spending a little bit of time in space. And we have no idea why. But if we can identify why, that could be something that could be fixed down the road with something like this. The things about your skeletal structure stretching out and whatnot, and your muscle mass and all that stuff, all the problems of space, they could be addressed in this fashion.
Which would be extremely helpful in keeping us alive in our hostile universe.
A few grains of salt.
Still, a few major challenges await us. Some technological, some ethical. Many of you watching will feel uncomfortable and fear that we will create a world in which we will reject non-perfect humans and pre-select features and qualities based on our idea of what's healthy.
Not at all. I'm not worried about that at all. I think that we already do that to an extent. So that's not a new problem that's going to come because of genetic engineering. That's a problem that exists today already. But what we can do is we can keep that problem because it's not going away. Let's just be honest, right? People are going to be judgy. That's just how people are. But we can keep that problem and make changes to better lives, to eradicate diseases, to improve quality of life. So I don't think that something like this should hold us back.
The thing is, we are already living in this world. Tests for dozens of genetic diseases or complications have become standard for pregnant women in much of the world. Often the mere suspicion of a genetic defect can lead to the end of a pregnancy. Take Down syndrome, for example, one of the most common genetic defects. In Europe, about 92% of all pregnancies where it's detected are terminated. The decision to terminate a pregnancy is incredibly personal, but it's important to acknowledge the reality that we are pre-selecting humans based on medical conditions.
It's very true. It's happening today already. Now, on that topic, I very firmly believe that those types of decisions should be left up to the parents. It's not my place to weigh in on that as someone who's not impacted by it. And I don't feel that lawmakers should weigh in on it either. You know, when it comes to very early term abortion, I think that there does need to be a line somewhere. You know, at some point it's too late. And where that point is for people much smarter than me to decide. Notice I said smarter, so I don't mean politicians, I mean scientists. But it's a very personal thing, knowing that you have to live with that consequence of that decision, and you have to live with the guilt that comes with that decision for the rest of your life. That's the parent's choice, and it shouldn't be anyone else's.
There is also no use in pretending this will change, so we have to act carefully and respectfully as we advance the technology and can make more and more selections. But none of this will happen soon. As powerful as CRISPR is, and it is, it's not infallible yet.
Yeah.
Wrong edits still happen, as well as unknown errors that can occur anywhere in the DNA and might go unnoticed. The gene edit might achieve the desired result, disabling a disease, but also might accidentally trigger unwanted changes. We just don't know enough yet about the complex interplay of our genes to avoid unpredictable consequences.
Good news, we cured your cancer. Bad news, we gave you a different type of cancer. Yeah, it's not, the technology's not perfect. It's certainly not to the point where it's going to be changing everything. But like they said earlier, is that they're already working on better versions of it, improved versions. So we'll have to see where that goes. The potential's there.
Working on accuracy and monitoring methods is a major concern as the first human trials begin. And since we've discussed a possible positive future, there are darker visions too. Imagine what a state like North Korea could do if they embraced genetic engineering.
Yeah.
Could a state cement its rule forever by forcing gene editing on their subjects?
Sorry, Germany, you're not allowed to do this. Oh, that was bad. But no, for real though, that's, you know, that was a horrible thing for me to say. And I said it jokingly. But in all truthfulness, I mean, you look at World War II and look at some of the stuff that Hitler was doing with his perfect species and everything like that. All we need is someone else like that to get their, in a position of power, to get their hands on this. And yeah, we might have a problem on our hands. So they bring up a very valid point. There's also some pretty major concerns here too.
What would stop a totalitarian regime from engineering an army of modified super soldiers?
It is doable
in theory. Scenarios like this one are far, far off into the future, if they ever become possible at all. But the basic proof of concept for genetic engineering like this already exists today. The technology really is that powerful.
Well, and wars are won more by technology and influence than they are by people, right? So even if you had an army of super soldiers that had increased strength and endurance and needed littler sleep and less food and stuff, that would have made a huge difference 200 years ago when troops were more a central part of battle. But today, it's drone strikes and tactical missiles and tanks and stuff like that, you know. So I don't think that would make as big of a difference today as it would have a couple hundred years ago. Today, technology reigns supreme, and the ability to influence the economics of a nation reigns supreme.
While this might be a tempting reason to ban genetic editing and related research, that would certainly be a mistake.
100%.
Banning human genetic engineering would only lead to the science wandering off to a place with jurisdiction and rules that we're uncomfortable with.
Yeah, 100%. Don't ban it. It's going to happen one way or the other, irregardless. Do not ban it. Embrace it. Legislate it. Control it. Be smart with your legislation, though.
Only by participating can we make sure that further research is guided by caution, reason, oversight, and transparency.
Yep.
Do you feel uncomfortable now? Most of us have something wrong with them. In the future that lies ahead of us, Would we have been allowed to exist? The technology is certainly a bit scary, but we have a lot to gain, and genetic engineering might just be a step in the natural evolution of intelligent species in the universe.
So that question, would we be allowed to exist in the world that we're about to create? I think that's a pointless question. That question is made to instill fear. It's not that world yet. We're not to that point. We may never be. And the fact of it is, if we were in that type of a world, and say my parents, if they had the choice when I was being born to say, hey, we know our family's prone to Alzheimer's and your son carries the gene for it, should we get rid of it? I would really hope that they would have said yes. Or whatever other diseases that you may have. 100%. I would hope that they would have chosen to modify me in a way that increases the likelihood of me living a longer and happier and fuller life. I would really hope that was the case. But it's not the case because they didn't have that option. So it's a rhetorical, pointless question.
We might end disease. We could extend our life expectancy by centuries and travel to the stars. There's no need to think small when it comes to this topic. Whatever your opinion on genetic engineering, the future is approaching no matter what. What has been insane science fiction is about to become our new reality.
And your new reality is being subscribed to the channel.
Reality full of opportunities and challenges.
Huh. Wow.
Videos.
Man, these guys do such a good job all the time. The music, the animation, the facts, the story, the narrative. Look how engaged we were this whole video. It's not easy to grab someone's attention and keep it that long. It really isn't. But I was engaged the whole time. There was not a second I was bored. These guys just, they're amazing. They are amazing. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you made it all the way to the end, would you please do me a favor? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're on our journey. We're halfway to 1,000. Can't wait to hit that. That's just our goal. We're going to keep going from there. But anyway, I really appreciate you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful day.